Okay, everyone, well, welcome to our Lunch and Learn. Today we are focusing on understanding the use of body cameras in criminal cases in general, but then also as
Thank you.
applies to
Bye.
domestic violence cases. So just a few housekeeping things before we get started. In the reminder email, you got a link for our evaluation. I'll also send that out once the training is over. Please take a couple minutes to complete that. We do rely on those evaluations for grant reporting purposes, as well as ideas for future trainings to provide to you all. So thank you in advance for completing that. Also, just some Zoom housekeeping reminders. Please make sure you keep yourself on mute so that there's no background noise. If you have any questions, you can throw them in the chat and I'm happy to call them out to Allie. But really, our hope is that today is more of an interactive training than perhaps some lunch and learns have been in the past. We know that there's a lot of questions around use of body cams and what that looks like. And so while Allie's going to give us some foundational information, we're also really hoping that people use this as an opportunity to ask questions. So it can be informal. You can ask them as they come up. You don't need to wait till the end. All right, can you scoot ahead, Allie? Thanks. So our objectives today are to gain an understanding of current body camera technology and how police departments locally are using that technology. We also want to talk about how domestic violence cases could be impacted by the use of body cams. And then we wanted to give you some takeaways, just nuggets of knowledge that you can use then when interacting with the public or with clients if you're in an advocacy role. The last thing then before I turn it over to Allie, so we do want to make you aware that this training was supported by a couple of our grants over here in Winnebago County. So this is supported by our Justice for Families grant, which supports our domestic violence court, as well as our Improving Criminal Justice Response grant and our Family Violence Coordinating Council. So this is a collaborative project among those three programs, and they like us to include these disclaimers. So now, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Attorney Allie Friend. She currently serves as the Deputy Chief of the Criminal Division at the Winnebago County State's Attorney's Office, and she is the supervisor of the Domestic Violence Unit. So take it away, Allie.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. As Nikki stated, hopefully if you guys have questions, just feel free to put it in the chat and interrupt. That's perfectly fine. I'm hoping to give you, again, the foundation of body cam in its current form and some ways that we're starting to use it specifically in domestic violence prosecution. So hopefully you can ask your questions. So let's just start first as far as who is using body cameras currently in our jurisdiction. So currently the Rockford Police Department is using body camera. The Winnebago County Sheriff's Office is using body cam. Rockton Police Department is also using body cam, and as of, I believe, last week, South Beloit Police Department is using body camera. So we still have some of our smaller agencies in this county that does not have body camera yet, but certainly they're working towards getting that process started. So when are body cameras used? Officers are equipped with the body cam. You can see the picture at the bottom. That's basically what it looks like. It's affixed to their shirt. If it's someone who wears a ballistic vest, then it's affixed to the vest. It should be recording at all times for the most part, especially when they are dispatched to a scene. What we are seeing primarily is a dispatch call comes in, and once that officer arrives at the scene, they have the ability to start the audio recording portion to, in essence, turn on their mic. So sometimes when they're just sitting in their car, the audio portion is not on, but they can activate it once they've been dispatched and they arrive. The body cam is, in essence, continuously recording, and when they are done at a scene, it is uploaded to their server, their cloud, and then we are immediately notified within typically about a week is when our office at the State's Attorney's Office would have access to their body cam footage. So how is it being used in criminal cases? It can be used in a variety of different ways. Certainly, the body camera is recording everything that's taking place. So what witnesses are saying on scene certainly captures their demeanor of how they are behaving. You know, you might also see other people in the background milling around. It basically is just capturing in real time what is occurring. It can also capture injuries that, for instance, a victim of domestic violence might have on her person. The environment, as you can see in the picture on the bottom, you know, if an officer is walking into a house where it's in disarray because items were being thrown around, historically, sometimes officers forget to take those pictures because that's not why they're responding. They might be responding to a domestic battery, not for items being thrown about in the residence, but their body camera certainly is capturing what that environment looks like in real time. Additionally, there is a GPS component to body camera. So anytime body cam is utilized for an officer and it goes to their cloud, our agencies use evidence.com Axon, which stores all of the body cam footage that we receive. On our end, what we can view is not only the video, but we can also view the GPS coordinates of where that body cam was. So for example, I've used it in aggravated fleeing cases. An officer sees a vehicle speeding, he activates his emergency lights, and then a high-speed chase takes place. You can see on evidence.com everywhere that that officer was traveling on a map. And that can be really good for jury trials, for example, instead of like putting still images of a map, they can see it in real time, the GPS coordinations directly next to the actual body cam footage that we have. So it can be utilized for a variety of different cases for the GPS coordinates. So use of body camera footage in domestic violence cases specifically. I think that some people might believe that now with body camera, a victim would not need to come to court to testify because their statement was already on body camera. That is not true. That's not accurate. The individual would still have to come testify against their abuser with a few exceptions. Historically, out of court statements is hearsay. So we can't introduce a hearsay statement, which is what would be captured on a body camera in trial. Now, domestic violence cases has a few exceptions for that, and it can be limited in some way as far as what statements we're permitted to use. So the first prong, the unavailability and forfeiture by wrongdoing. Those are actually considered two different aspects of when we might be able to use the body camera. So unavailability in domestic violence cases can be shown by the prosecution if the prosecutor has one, filed notice of our intent to use a victim's out-of-court statement, and it has to be specific to non-testimonial statements. If we have made reasonable efforts to have the victim here in court. So that would be us issuing a subpoena for them to come to court, reasonable attempts to serve them with their subpoena and or actual service of their subpoena, but that victim does not come to court. For example, if they've told our office they're not coming no matter what, that could be deemed to be unavailable. And then we could potentially ask the court to allow us to introduce their statement. So in this day, it wouldn't be just an officer testifying as to what the victim said. It would be our availability to hit play as far as what the victim told the officer on scene. Additionally, there's another aspect of forfeiture by wrongdoing. That is if the defendant has engaged in or acquiesced in that victim's unavailability to come to trial. So a lot of where we see this part of unavailability is in jail calls for domestic violence cases. The defendant who's at jail, he is calling the victim and telling her not to come to court, telling her to stay away, don't get served with your subpoena. If you don't come, the case is going to be dismissed. That's common of what we hear on our end as far as the jail calls. If we file a motion for forfeiture by wrongdoing and the court finds that that motion should be granted, specifically for the jail calls or whatever content we have, then the defendant has lost his right to confront his accuser. So we don't need the victim to come to court in that particular instance. Their statements are going to come in through either other people that they made statements to, body camera footage, text messages, pretty much everything is going to come in because the defendant lost his right to confront his accuser. Body camera can also come in for substantive impeachment. So what that would look like is if a victim in a domestic battery case, for example, came in to testify. So they did actually appear in court, but now on the stand are saying something completely different than what they said originally to police officers. So no, that didn't happen. No, I never said that. Then if we are able to impeach them with their statements, the body camera could be played again. That would be called substantive impeachment because we have a prior recording of what was originally said to police officers on scene, for example, and now in court, they're saying something completely different. So it would be up to the trier of fact, whether that be the judge, if it's a bench trial, or the jury, if it's a jury trial, deciding if they believe that individual then when the incident first happened, or if they believe them now as they're testifying on the stand. Body camera can also be used for example to portray injury. So sometimes people refuse to be photographed as far as the injuries that the officers are seeing in person, but because of body camera, we are able to visibly see what those injuries are because they're being recorded in real time. So there might be a time when we don't physically have photographs, but we still have the video itself. So we would be asking to publish the video to show the injuries. There might also be an occasion that we could introduce the body cam to show the victim's state of mind, the hysteria behind what was going on with other participants at the scene. And then of course, the defendant's actions, if they're relevant, and any statements that the defendant makes on scene would also equally be captured on body camera. So we're not just relying on an officer accurately writing down what, if anything, the defendant said. It would actually be a recorded statement. So as far as if victims or witnesses are on body camera footage, why are written statements taken? Our office is moving away from that. We've instructed law enforcement that if you have body camera and it's functioning, that you don't need to have a written statement. That's really like duplicative. It's doesn't do anything. From my standpoint, the body camera is better evidence versus a written statement that is written by a police officer and signed and acknowledged by an individual on scene. The body camera is better. It's actually their words, not just a summary of what they said happened. So I think I already covered this, but why do victims or witnesses still need to testify in court? Any statements that are made not from the witness stand is considered hearsay. So unless we have reasons to introduce the prior statements, either for impeachment or for unavailability of a witness, the person still would need to come to court, or we have to make reasonable efforts to have them come to court. As far as if you have questions, who do you contact? I guess that could come up in a variety of ways. If you have questions regarding a specific client that you have, and whether or not something was captured on body camera, you can certainly call the state's attorney's office and we can help you. The police department can help you. There's also another aspect to this of evidence.com. So evidence.com houses our body camera footage, but it also houses all of our physical evidence as well. So any photographs that were taken would be stored on evidence.com. Additionally, what has started as well is if the victim or a witness has physical evidence like text messages or something that they have received from the defendant or ring camera footage that they have, they are given a card from police officers that tell them how to upload that evidence onto the server. So instead of having, for example, us to have us download someone's phone, they can take screenshots and upload it directly to the server. And they can do that anywhere. So it hopefully will alleviate someone having to go back to the police department and wait for someone to assist them. They're given the direct instructions as to how to upload it themselves. So I kind of went over this as far as what happens to body camera footage and where does it go? It goes to the cloud. It is a huge database that has to house a lot of information. For example, I have one case where there were 26 responding officers. All of those officers had body cameras. So, and all of their body cameras, I would estimate, were approximately an hour a piece. So that is a lot of data that is getting stored just to one particular case number.
Allie, we have a question about how long is body camera footage kept for up in the cloud, I would assume.
So currently, if the case has not been disposed of, meaning that the case is still open and pending, it is being stored there. The only way for it to be deleted off of the server is for a disposition, whether that's a guilty, a not guilty, a dismissal, or a plea disposition. We won't send over that evidence receipt until usually about 2 months after a case is closed. So they are required to keep it on their cloud. So the law enforcement has their cloud. Our office actually has our own cloud. So we are keeping it in 2 different spots. So we have to delete it on our end too. And then the police officers would have to delete it on their end as well for evidence disposition.
Thank you.
So as far as safety considerations, especially for advocates, just similar to what has already been a concern, defendants in criminal cases obviously have the right to review their discovery. They can review police reports, they can review physical evidence. And for the last, I think, 1.5 years, there was a Supreme Court rule that allows defendants to have their own copy of discovery, although redacted with personal identifiers and things like that. But they have their own copy sometimes of discovery. So for instance, in domestic cases, if a victim has said something, whether it's on body camera or in the police report or in a written statement, that defendant is going to know what was originally said to the police officers. So that's just something to keep in mind, just like it has always been as far as them having access to written statements and police reports. So do you guys have any questions in general? And then I'm also going to talk briefly about our jail call or our enhanced criminal response liaison as well.
I have a question, but I'm not really sure how to ask it. So hopefully it makes sense in the way that I say it.
Okay.
So you mentioned earlier that you're using body cam footage now in lieu of, if police are following instruction, body cam footage. But if the body cam footage is deleted after disposition and there's no written statement, where's the history exist of the thing? Does that make sense? Is there still a probable cause statement? Is there still some kind of recitation of facts related to that case?
Well, you would still always have the police report, and in the police reports, officers still provide a summary of what was said to them on scene by either the victim, witnesses, defendant. So there's still like a summary of what had happened. For instance, if it went to a trial, we can't just introduce a website. We can't introduce the cloud. So we download a physical copy of the video that is introduced as part of the court record. So if it was a trial-based case, then it would be in the court file as well as our own internal file and a physical copy. It's just the cloud format is supposed to be deleted, but I know that, I mean, I don't know if we've ever actually deleted anything yet, but there's gonna come to a point when we have to start staying on top of it because the cloud is only so big and it is huge, especially for the law enforcement database, but these videos do take up a lot of data.
Ally, Amy Newell has her hand raised. Go ahead, Amy.
So I think my question probably ties in with what Megan just asked a little bit, in that I feel like I'm hearing two different things from you around how the body cam can be used and that they're not doing victim statements anymore. But I thought I heard you say that the body cams can't be used because that's hearsay, but they're not taking victim statements anymore because they're using body cams. And so I'm just trying to make sure I'm understanding the difference in what's being used for what.
Sure. So not that they're not taking victim or witness statements. I mean, obviously they arrive on scene, they ask what happened. That is a statement that that individual is making as far as what happened. The written statement has always been an officer afterwards saying, would you agree to doing a written statement? If they agree to it, then the officer handwrites a summary of what was just said and having that individual sign it, acknowledging that that's an accurate summary of what was just said. The body cam already does that because it's a recorded statement and it's in its entirety, not just a separate summary. Both a written statement and body cam statements, so everything that is said on scene is hearsay in the legal field. So you can't use either of those ever at a trial unless certain things happen. So without body cam, so before body cam existed, at a trial, if someone is testifying on the witness stand inconsistent with what they had said originally to a police officer, you can confront them with that statement. So if there was no written statement done, it is simply, did you tell officer so-and-so on this day that he hit you? No, I never said that. Then you have to call the officer to say, on this day, did this person tell you that he hit her? Yes. That is not substantive impeachment. That is just like a credibility impeachment. So they can't, the trier of fact, judge or jury, can't make a determination as far as, did we believe her then when she said that, or do we believe her now when she's saying it didn't happen? Because it wasn't recorded or it wasn't a written statement. So that's why prosecutors always wanted law enforcement to get that written statement, because that changes it just from an oral statement being made to an acknowledgement that that victim is saying this happened on this day. Because let's say that same person testified, no, I never said that to the officer, he didn't hit me. Oh, okay, isn't it true on this day you allowed a written statement to be completed and this is your signature, right? And then they have to acknowledge that that's their signature. That physical written statement comes in now as evidence for the jury or the judge to review. And then they can consider if they believed the person back when the incident happened or if they believe them now. So the body camera basically eliminates the need of the written statement because whatever, I would much prefer someone saying for themselves what happened versus a piece of paper that was written by a police officer on the scene and just signed by the individual. So that's why I prefer the body cam. versus written statements. Now, certainly we have our smaller jurisdictions that don't have body camera yet, so they're still utilizing written statements until they get it. Hopefully that made sense.
Haley, I have a bit of a follow-up question maybe to what Megan was asking. And I heard you say that things can be deleted off the cloud, but they may still be part of the state's internal files. Would you use that then? And I'm probably getting the legal terminology wrong, but for what is called prior bad acts or maybe propensity, would you still have that then? Or would the video be gone and then there's no statement?
If it's a case that we did like a direct download of the video, yes, we would still have it in our file. For their propensity issue, we typically use all of the past police reports. So if I have an individual that, you know, has committed 5 other prior domestic battery offenses, and it could be the same victim, it could be different victims, I'm going to be running a history of any police contact that that individual has had that has alleged an incident of domestic violence. Doesn't have to be specifically domestic battery. It could be violation of an order of protection, stalking behavior. I'm going through that person's contacts with local law enforcement and or looking at their prior arrest sheet. I am then obtaining those past police reports of what was indicated to be said. So I can't really use those old videos of what someone had said in the past in a new prosecution for domestic battery. But the allegations of what is said to have been done can still certainly come in if the person's willing to testify. I've had, you know, I had a sentencing hearing where that his first wife, I want to say, and it was like 30 years before, she was willing to come in to testify. So I had gone through his whole background. I learned that there had been some domestic battery instances back in the 1990s, and was able to locate her. She was willing to come in. So she still has to physically come, though, to tell her story in that particular case for propensity. Other questions?
Commander Lil just put in the chat that in her department, police will keep the footage up to 2 years after an arrest is made.
Okay. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about the enhanced criminal liaison position that we have. Hopefully it will be starting here soon, but this individual is going to be an employee of the state's attorney's office. She has experience with domestic violence, but her primary role is to assist in the prosecution and towards evidence-based prosecution. So part of her job will, of course, be reviewing body camera. So if we have a trial coming up and we need a summary of what was said in that body camera, just so we have like a transcript almost to review, she'll be assisting us with that. But also, primarily, a lot of it's going to be dealing with forfeiture by wrongdoing. So it's going to be listening to jail calls, running through the database if this defendant has had communication with their victim. Typically it's no contact is supposed to not be taking place already, but listening to the jail calls, listening for certain conversations that are being said, such as don't come to court, I'm going to demand speedy trial, don't come around here anymore. Certainly if they're talking about the incident themselves, the apologies for what he did, and then how now you need to help me out and not go to court to testify against me. So we're going to be listening for a lot of those conversations, because if those conversations are taking place, then we're going to file our forfeiture by wrongdoing motions. So regardless of if she comes to testify or not, we can still proceed forward in the prosecution. So does anyone have any questions about that as well?
I don't see anything specific to that, Allie, but backing up a little bit, Kim Wolgass asked, can body cameras be used while the officer is in a hospital setting? And can that footage be used in court?
Yes. Because typically when officers are responding to the hospital, there might be a nurse nearby, but they're not actively talking to their doctor or their nurse for patient care. It's typically an officer has been notified that they can come in now and speak to the individual. So they go in and speak to the individual just like normal. I mean, they're equipped with their body cam. It's running all the time. So we can use it in the same way as if someone was just responding to the scene at a house.
Great, thank you. Ally, something you and I talked about briefly was how the Pretrial Fairness Act may affect body cams, because there is, I believe, some language in the law that everyone has to have body cams, police officers. Can you talk about that briefly?
Yeah, so the body cam implementation for the act is a tiered aspect. So like the larger police departments are already required to have body camera. Certainly it's very expensive equipment. It's expensive for the cloud to house all of that data. So the legislation has given a little bit more leeway to the smaller departments so they can get funding for all of that. So soon in the state of Illinois, everyone is going to have body camera. And the Pretrial Fairness Act has a lot of different implications for a lot of different cases, but for domestic violence, it is a detainable offense. It's detainable as a felony and it's detainable as a misdemeanor. So the state can seek detention on domestic battery offenses. And that would just be the state providing notice that we're seeking to detain this person. Then we would have a detention hearing for the judge to decide if we have met our burden. And then if the judge believes that we did, then that person's going to be detained until they go to trial or otherwise the case is resolved. So depending, it could have an increase of domestic battery individuals who have charged with that remaining in custody, because if specific findings are found, then they're not going to be given a recognizance bond and released from bond call.
We have another question from Kim. Can sexual assault nurses or SANE nurses ask the officer to not record since the victim has the option to speak with the officer or not? Hopefully I got that right, Kim. And if I didn't, unmute and let me know.
If you're talking about like during the SANE evaluation aspect of it, obviously if that individual chooses not to talk to the police, then an officer wouldn't necessarily be there and present other than collection of certain items, but they shouldn't be engaging in conversation if that individual has elected not to talk to the police at that time. Certainly, let's say 911's called and it's before the hospital setting, more than likely they've already had a conversation of what happened and why police officers have responded. But if the individual, for example, just goes immediately from what happened to the hospital, then there might not be that dialogue. Hopefully I answered that correctly.
I don't see anything saying you did not answer her question, so we'll assume that is good. I had a question, Ally, about the evidence.com. I hadn't heard about that before. So is that something then that like an advocate or case manager or victim service provider could assist with?
As far as uploading things?
Uploading, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, because only law enforcement and certain other organizations have direct access to the case files. So that's typically the police department. And then like our office would have direct access to their evidence that they have stored on there. But yeah, I mean, advocates can certainly assist the individual with uploading the information. I've never tried it myself, but it's my understanding that it seems to be pretty easy. For the card that they get, it gives them instructions as to exactly where you would forward that information to. And then on our end, we get alerts anytime a new piece of evidence has been added to that case file. So we always, especially in larger cases, you could get 20 emails indicating that new evidence has been added, because some evidence takes a while to trickle in.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Back to Kim. We got a couple questions now. Things are heating up, Allie. So Kim wanted to know, she says this is a follow-up to her first question. The officer will be there to pick up the sexual assault kit, and often they will ask nurses what happened. That's the only reason she's asking, and she apologizes she doesn't have a microphone today.
It's okay. So the question being whether or not the interview between the officer and the nurse is recorded or not recorded.
That's how I'm understanding it, yes.
I don't think I've had to encounter that. So I don't want to give misinformation. That would probably be a better question directed towards Kirsten Kravanek, who does our sex crimes, because I don't want to give the wrong information of whether or not they could turn it off during that time. I mean, there's times where officers turn off the audio, like if they're speaking amongst each other and deciding like a new course of action or something, they're allowed to mute the microphone for that period of time. I just don't know outside of law enforcement if that carries through or not.
Okay. And Kim, I can help connect you with Kirsten if you need to. You might already have her information though. All right. And then Mary from the Family Peace Center asked, is there a limit to the amount of evidence that can be uploaded? She worked with a survivor to upload data, and then the link did not work anymore when she tried to add additional evidence.
Not for the volume. I think there's an expiration time frame though of the link. So typically I've heard it's like 7 days from the date that the link has been live, it will expire. So it's my understanding they would just have to call the police department back to get a new updated link. But there shouldn't be a limit as to how much evidence could be uploaded. I mean, there's cases that have 1,000 pieces of evidence on evidence.com under one case number. So,
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm. Any other questions?
Not seeing anything at the moment, and I've looked at our list. I don't have anything additional to add. If people think of additional things, Allie, can they contact you, or what should be their course of action?
Yeah, no, that's fine. And if you want, you can, like anyone who participated, you can send them my email address. It's typically the
Okay.
better way to get a faster response.
Okay. Great. Well, before we close up, I want to draw your attention to the thank you screen. We appreciate you all coming today and the questions, and hopefully this gave you something that you can use in your work, whether it's with litigants or clients or whatever role you're taking. Please fill out the evaluation that you received a link for prior to this training. I will send another one and include Allie's email address in that. And we're also looking for ideas for future training. So if you have ideas or things that you feel would be helpful, please include that on your evaluation as well. Any last comments, Allie?
Nope.
All right. Well, great. This is super, super helpful. Thank you so much for taking your time and sharing your expertise with us all. And thank you to all of you. I'll see many of you soon, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.